I'll use it so you all can. Everybody here okay? Well, all right. I think we're very lucky today to have Dr. Ian Thompson come and talk to us. And if I were to go through his resume, it would be 30 minutes. And you think I'm kidding, but I'm not. West Point graduate, went to Tulane Medical School, then served at Brooke Army Hospital, then at Sloan Kettering, served in the United States and Afghanistan, Iraq. When COVID hit here in San Antonio a year and a half ago, Ian, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I remember reading that Dr. Ian Thompson was in charge of setting the protocols for how the hospitals handle COVID in the United States. None of us are happy with what we read in the papers and what we hear on the news. Is it true? Is it not true? The best way to find out is to have a medical person who has no agenda other than to make your lives, my life, better because of medicine and science. He has a study, I was just looking a moment ago. Ian was, don't come looking over here. He served as the principal investigator of the prostate cancer prevention trial since its inception in 1992. Over 18,882 people participated. What you're going to learn from him today is not guesswork, it's science and testing. And again, I could keep going and going, and I won't. So here he is, and he also speaks Spanish.
Thank you, Tim. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me. Just by way of disclosure, Mr. Musgrave is on our board, so I work for him in some respects, yes, and we both work for Kathy, so that's the way it works, right? ¿Y cuántas personas prefieren español, por favor? Ok, pues con eso vamos a hablar un poco en español e inglés, los dos, una mezcla de los dos. So we'll go back and forth so we make sure if there are questions that prefer. No me gusta. I don't like this. Nadie de nosotros nos gustamos. None of us like this at all. Pero vamos a sobrevivir. We are going to survive this y vamos a ver el año que viene y los otros y los próximos. We'll see the year to come if we're smart, if we take care of ourselves. And the reason why I am here, la razón por qué estoy aquí, es porque Tim me pidió y asked me to come. Because I know that he and Kathy and your leadership here care very much about you. COVID is a virus that unfortunately we now have been exposed to for the last year and a half. Ha sido año y medio que hemos visto los resultados de COVID. I was the president of a hospital for the last 4 years. I've run hospitals in the military and run departments and cancer centers at the university. I guess I'm a scientist, soy un científico, pero también soy médico y cirujano. I'm also a physician and a surgeon. Tengo clínicas, mi consultorio es jueves. During the week I see one day of clinic and I operate one day out of the week. So I have the opportunity to take care of patients. Patients are after my God and my family, they're my third love. So we are very, very interested in their welfare, and that means your welfare. La cosa que es importante son ustedes y sus familias, su salud. COVID has changed. COVID ha cambiado entre el año pasado. It came first affecting us. We saw it first in San Antonio with the people who came off the cruise ships. In fact, we saw one of the very first of those patients getting off the cruise ship at our hospital at Cristo Santa Rosa in el Centro de Médico, in the Medical Center Hospital. En ese tiempo, la mayoría de gente eran viejos. At that time, the first COVID, the majority of people were older folks. Y también en ese tiempo no teníamos cubrebocas, we didn't have masks at that time, and no sabíamos tanto sobre el virus. We didn't know very much about the virus. We now know a lot more. But en ese tiempo, la única cosa que teníamos era el cubrebocas y los gowns. Manteniendo sanitación de nuestras manos. We were washing our hands, we were with gowns and so forth. And we went home. We did a pretty good job with that first blast of the virus. It went up, and we took care of ourselves, and we stayed away from others, and it went back down again. And then there was Memorial Day of last year. You probably remember that. I remember it seeing on the newspaper the Guadalupe. Recuerdo el río Guadalupe y las fiestas de personas jugando durante el Memorial Day fin de semana, and we saw it go back up. And it was a bad thing for us in the hospitals because we were overwhelmed with patients, absolutely overwhelmed with patients. Se subió los números en el hospital, it went up in the hospital, and then it began to go back down again. And we caught our breath, and we made it through that. And then school started again, and it went back up again. And that was before we had the vaccine. We really didn't have very much of anything to combat the virus with. We have some medications that help in the hospital. They help a little bit. But nonetheless, as the hospital president at that time, era el presidente del hospital, en ese tiempo, era un tiempo terrible para mí, era un tragedia, cada día una tragedia, con personas llorando y preguntando a Dios y a mí por qué estaban muriendo sus miembros de su familia. It was a tragedy for me to have a wife asking me and asking God why it was that someone in their family was dying from COVID. It broke my heart. Se quebró mi corazón. And it broke all of our hearts. And also to see our nurses working so hard. We cried together, lloramos juntos. It was a very bad time. And then, milagro, a miracle. Los personas científicos que estaban trabajando sobre esto para años y años, casi 20 años trabajando en la vacuna. For about 20 years we've been working on this. Actually, it's been 18 years working on the technology for this vaccine. No es cosa nueva. It's not something new. Años y años trabajando con eso. And I remember the first dose of vaccine that we gave at our hospital, because you may remember that the first doses of vaccine were given for healthcare workers que estaban trabajando en los ICUs y tratando pacientes con COVID. These were for patients that were treating folks with COVID. And it was just a miracle. Y yo, durante el fin del año pasado, over the holidays, yo hizo tiempo voluntario. I was volunteering como un escritor. I was checking folks in for this and monitoring them as we were giving them the vaccine. And the folks that came in to get the vaccine were in jubilation. They were so happy to get the vaccine. I saw two stand up and they grabbed each other and they hicieron una baile. They were just like dancing with each other. It was like a miracle. And it was a miracle because the numbers began to go down dramatically. And I remember when I got my vaccination, I stood up and I sang a song in front of 40 people that I didn't know, en frente de personas que yo no sabía, cantando una canción de gratitud. And then we saw the COVID change. We saw dos cosas pasaron. Se cambió el COVID porque sabemos que un virus en una población cambia como bacteria. Cuando personas están tomando antibióticos, se cambia la bacteria para sobrevivir. Just like with bacteria, that when they're exposed to antibiotics, they mutate to be able to survive. Just like humans, we change over time to be able to cope with heat and food and other things. Bacteria, which divide very quickly, they change, as do viruses. And so when you get your annual flu shot, it changes every year because the virologists look at the patterns that they see around the world and they change the vaccine. El COVID no es diferente que cualquier otro virus. COVID's no different than other ones. It changed, se cambió. Y el variante Delta, the Delta variant, is just incredibly more infectious. And what we have seen in San Antonio, the United States, the world, está cambiando las personas que están sufriendo del COVID. What's changing is the people that we're seeing in the hospital. Last year, el año pasado, eran personas viejos. Last year it was older folks. Now, the average age in the hospital is under 50. La mitad de personas en el hospital ahora son menos de 50 años de edad. Hemos visto personas de 20 años, de 18 años. We've seen people 20 years old, 18 years old with very bad COVID. Hemos visto niños también. We've seen children with COVID as well. Y el razón es porque las personas viejos, la mayoría, más de 70%, han vacunados. The folks over 70, the majority have been vaccinated. And so tienen protección contra el virus. So they're generally pretty protected. And my generation, you're not old enough yet, but, nosotros viejos, we also, Tim asked me why it is I came in with a mask. I'm wearing a mask everywhere, and everywhere. So the older folks that are vaccinated are also, we've seen what's happened to older folks with COVID. And let me tell you, I was a trauma surgeon in Iraq. Helicopters landing out front with people very badly injured that went to our operating rooms. I operated on those folks. The PTSD that I have is not from Iraq. It's from the last year of taking care of patients with COVID. And really not so much taking care of them, it's their families whose hearts are broken. El PTSD que tengo, la ansiedad que tengo, no es de la guerra de Gulf War número 1, operando y manejando pacientes con trauma. Es del COVID y sus familias, quienes sus corazones han quebrado. To watch a wife whose husband is dying, whose daughter has already died of COVID, it just breaks your heart. And every single one of us has that humanity within us. It just breaks our heart. So, vamos a tomando algunos minutitos para preguntas sobre eso. We'll take some time for question and answer. So I have a vision of the future. The vision of the future is that we all get vaccinated, and this will go away. You'll see different changes that will come down because the virus may change. We learn more, and so what I told the folks in the hospitals was just be prepared for change, because just like the cancers that I treat, the way that I treat them today is very different than it was 10 years ago, because Our treatments are better, we understand it more. The same thing is true for the virus. Estamos cambiando las recomendaciones para tratamiento del virus y también para prevención. So we're changing. But my take-home message right now is that for folks like you who care very much about each other, care very much about your families and your friends, and those of us who have, have a desire to make sure that others are okay. Mis recomendaciones, my recommendations. Uno, tome la vacuna. It's very safe. Take the vaccination. It's very, very safe. Es una tragedia ahora es que más del 95% de los pacientes de los hospitales no han tenido la vacuna. More than 95% of the patients that are in the hospital have not been vaccinated. Some of the hospitals, it's more than 98%. It's a very rare person who's hospitalized who's been vaccinated. And tell your friends. And I'm going to go out on a limb. This is Ian Thompson talking. This is Ian Thompson hablando. Not politically correct. Puede ser que no es correcto de un vista de política. But I don't call it misinformation with regards to the vaccine and testing and COVID. I saw a video of someone talking about how you don't trust the CDC and the government. They're not perfect. But I know these doctors that work with the government. Many of them are friends of mine. They are extremely dedicated. They don't get paid as much as other doctors because they're working for the government. Their only interest is in our collective health. La única interés que tienen los doctores del Institutos Nacionales de Salud, the doctors of the NIH, the only interest that they have is keeping people well. Uno, la vacuna, tómelo por favor. Para su salud, también para sus niños, para sus abuelos, para sus hermanos, hermanas, y para sus vecinos, y para la puebla. Take the vaccine. It's for you, for your family, and for everyone else in San Antonio. And todos somos familia, ¿verdad? All of us are family. So take it for your family. It's very safe. In fact, the most boring thing for a physician is to sit in a room with folks who have just got their vaccination, who have to wait 15 minutes. There is nothing for me to do. Lo más aburrido que estaba esperando para personas, para complicaciones después de su vacuna. Nunca he visto en miles de personas. You can get a little fever, maybe a little muscle ache, duele un poco ahí, it hurts a little bit. That's really about it. Al contrario, getting COVID is a horrible experience. So one. Two, I'm wearing a mask everywhere. I'm taking it off so I can speak to you. I would recommend that you wear a mask. And if folks laugh at you, it's okay. My sister says I have big ears. She said that since I was very small. They still laugh at me, it's okay. You don't have to tell others that they're wrong, but I would just encourage everyone to wear a mask. When your children go to school, please encourage them to wear a mask. I know that politically they may not be required to wear a mask. Please do so. I'm also avoiding large gatherings of folks, and personally, I'm taking out from restaurants and taking it home. I think we need to support our economy, just like supporting you, but we can support our economy by taking food home. And part of the reason for that is that you can get COVID from a person who's unvaccinated as well as from someone who is vaccinated. So every little thing that we can do will make a difference. And those are really it. Oh, the third thing is that if you feel ill, runny nose, cough, something like that, stay home. and I know that you have policies in place for that. Stay home, call in, say, I think something may be going on. We have seen within multiple businesses, including our own, someone who came in and then a bunch of other folks got sick and went home. Fortunately, they're all okay. La tercera cosa, primero, vacuna, segundo, cobraboca, máscara, tome por favor. La tercera cosa es, si no siente bien, por favor, quédese en casa, hable con su médico, hable con su manejamiento aquí para instrucciones que hacer, pero es muy, muy importante. Si no siente bien, toma una examinación de COVID y si tiene COVID puede hacer un quarantine, no, I don't know the word in Spanish, no sé, pero mantenga usted afuera de otras personas para que no se transmite a otros. So stay at home and so that you're really not affecting others. Just those three things. That's really it. And by doing all of that and encouraging your friends to do the same, we'll get through this. We'll be fine. Where are we right now in San Antonio? The hospitals are full. They are full. What used to happen was New York got bad, our nurses went to New York. New York got better, San Antonio got bad, the nurses came here. No more. It's everywhere. We all need to pray for our nurses, and we need to pray that the numbers go down because the rate of increase is unsustainable. If you draw a line about what's happening in the hospitals now, it's not something that we would want to think about. It's something of a disaster movie. So pray for that. Pray for our nurses. They are exhausted. Lo que está pasando en los hospitales, somos llenos. Están llenos todos los hospitales a través de todo el país y no tenemos suficientes enfermeras para trabajar. Por favor, usa sus oraciones para las enfermeras y que se empiece a bajar los números. Because there may be no room in the hospitals if you get sick, be it with COVID or with something else. La última cosa, por favor, mantenga su salud. No hace cosas que son, ¿cómo se dice?, peligrosos. No es tiempo para subir a ladder. Not time to get up on a ladder, right? Not time. It's time to take care of yourself because you don't want something bad to happen to yourself that will put you in a hospital. And tell that to your friends. Tell that if you have a father or a grandfather who's getting ready to climb on a roof to do something, wait till November to do that or till October. It's not time to get sick. Time to stay away from the hospitals by keeping yourself healthy. Okay, suficiente. Questions, preguntas sobre la vacuna, sobre examinaciones, on anything. Yes, sir.
Different levels of masks. We have some that weigh the N95, some with the cloth.
Yeah.
Any input on that?
So N95 is the best for protection. But interestingly, there are different sizes of N95, and there's a way to test for whether you're wearing the right size. We generally, when I came in with Tim, I was wearing the standard medical mask, which is generally okay. If you want to make it a little better, I probably wouldn't use an N95. I'd put on 2 medical masks. 2 of them right next to each other. Breathing's pretty well, increases the filtration. The cloth masks are the least effective, unless you have a filter that you can put in. So best is N95, but it has to be fitted to be good. Second best is a medical mask. If you want it to be almost as good as an N95, put 2 on. And the third is a cloth mask, just simply because the openings are so much bigger. And then periodically it needs to be changed. If you hold it up to light, you see openings in it, it's not working, get a new one. Good question. So, los 3 cobrebocas, el N95 es el mejor, pero necesita una examinación porque son diferentes sizes de la cobraboca. Segundo es um, la máscara como ustedes están, many of you are wearing. Es el segundo. Si quiere protección adicional, usa dos. Usted puede usar dos. El tercer es una máscara de fabric. Es menos eficiente. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Can you speak to the difference between what it was like with the older population that got COVID versus the younger population that you're seeing now? Is it the same symptoms? Is it as bad?
So the question was, what's different between the older population who had COVID and the younger? Diferente entre los viejos y los más menos viejos. So the older population, so the symptoms are basically the same. Los síntomas son básicos, son iguales. Pero what we're seeing is that it's happening much more quickly in the younger folks. They're getting sicker quicker. And menos viejos, sus síntomas se desarrollan más rápidamente y también se mejoran más rápidamente o deprisa y también mueren más rápidamente. The old variant of COVID, it seemed to spare the younger folks. This one doesn't care. This one doesn't care. You can tell I'm very upset over this. Yes, ma'am.
What about the booster? You know, and how long?
Good question. Yes, ma'am. So the question is, what about the booster? I would just say stay tuned. In countries like Israel, there's some other places it's been used. It's been used for the folks who are immunosuppressed or whose immune systems are not as good. For example, people who have an organ transplant or folks who have rheumatoid arthritis or psoriasis or ulcerative colitis that are taking medications that control those processes but also suppress the immune system. It appears to help them. And I wouldn't be surprised if within 2 to 3 weeks there is a recommendation for that group of people to get the booster. For someone like me, I'm 67, my guess is that we'll probably get the booster recommendation maybe towards the end of the year, but we have to remember that there have been tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of folks participating in clinical trials who are 6 months ahead of us, that we know a lot about, and they've not yet been found to benefit that much from the booster yet. So all of those people who participated in that clinical trial are way ahead of us, and that will then inform CDC, NIH, National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease on what to recommend for that. So we're okay. I know that there are people that are going out to places to say, because right now you can't get a booster if at all. So if you walk in and say, I've been vaccinated, I'd like a booster, it's not approved by the FDA, even for emergency use authorization. The only way you can get it is to walk in and tell a fib, tell a lie that I've not been vaccinated. And that's on social media and the news that people have been doing that. I wouldn't recommend that because we have people who are looking at that to give us good recommendations. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if within a few weeks that that booster will be recommended for people who are on immunosuppressants. What's that? Oh, a booster shot is, that's a good question, because that's a complicated question. What is a booster? A booster right now would be, if you got the J&J, it would be a second J&J. If you got the Moderna or the Pfizer, it would be a third Moderna or Pfizer. But they're also looking to see whether, if you got Moderna or Pfizer, whether J&J may be a good booster, because it's a little bit different, and vice versa. So it's to help boost the immune system even more. La pregunta es sobre las vacunas booster, el tercer vacuna de eso, el segundo si tomaba el J&J. Ahora no sabemos que es necesario, pero probablemente entre 2 o 3 semanas o un mes más o menos vamos a tener recomendaciones sobre el uso de esos para personas en que su sistema de immune sistema no está funcionando normalmente en general a través de medicamentos que están tomando como steroids. It's a very good question about the booster. Stay tuned. Yes, sir.
Two questions, I guess. One, if you've had COVID, how safe are you? And two, if you had COVID but it was, let's call it original COVID, are you safe from Delta variant?
Great questions. So just in case you didn't hear, if you've had COVID, are you free and clear? And if you had COVID February of last year, are you free and clear? The challenge with it is that what it appears is that most folks who get COVID, their immunity goes up and then goes back down again. Unlike if you've had the vaccine, because it's designed to keep your immunity up. So we know many, many people who got COVID, decided not to get the vaccination, and got it again. And there have been people who have died that that's happened to. And part of it may be because they got the original COVID, right? So now they're getting infected with a different strain. So the recommendation, I think it's 42 days after your symptoms are gone to get the vaccination. La pregunta es si ha tenido COVID en el año pasado o cualquier tiempo, todavía necesita la vacuna. La respuesta es absolutamente. Tome porque la protección que tiene después del COVID, la infección, es mucho menos que la vacuna. Por eso es absolutamente necesario tomar la vacuna porque se puede tener una recurrencia de la enfermedad y puede ser que es peor. Se puede tener sobrevida de la infección inicial y se puede morir del segundo. So you don't want to get it, make your way through, and then have to have it again. Very good question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I've heard people say they don't get the vaccine because they don't know the long-term effects of the vaccine.
Yeah.
Can you give us any information concerning the effects that we know of the vaccine versus the long-term effects of COVID?
Yes. Well, you can tell the main reason I'm here is because they're hugely different. The side effects of the vaccine in general are very short-term. Short arm, maybe a little bit of fever, maybe a little bit of a headache in the vast majority. Some other people may have had some other things that have happened, but in general, the side effects of the vaccine are minimal. Side effects of having COVID are horrible. Even if you have, we had a person who had a breakthrough that, on our staff who felt miserable for 2 weeks. Even a minor case is you're feeling miserable. What's happening right now, especially with the younger folks, I was talking with one of our nurses who's in the ICU, is that we're seeing that they're getting it and they may be surviving, but their kidneys are dead. They spill out a whole bunch of little blood clots that go to the kidneys, lodge in the blood vessels, and the kidneys are dead. They're on dialysis. Or they've got a tracheostomy. They're breathing through here. It's a horrible thing. I mean, in some ways, I don't like to say it this way. Death may be, no, you know where I'm going with this. But it's a horrible, horrible thing afterwards. So, yes, there are possibilities. But when you look at, we get the flu vaccine every year because there are people die all the time with that, and it's a miserable thing as well. If you've ever been in the pool and not able to breathe, or if you've ever known somebody who was a smoker who got COPD, have you ever been suffocating? That's the feeling. Oh my goodness. So, potential side effects, but the side effects, los efectos secundarios de la vacuna son como eso, y los efectos secundarios o las complicaciones de COVID son como esto. Hugely different. And long term, these vaccination technologies have been around for 20 years. So we know that, is there a risk? Absolutely. And if you want risk to be zero, you'll never get in your car, right? Because you can get in your car, put your seatbelt on, and something bad could happen. But everything is always a risk versus a benefit, and for the vaccine, it's incredibly beneficial. Yes, sir.
There are probably some things I can, maybe tell us, things I can do to boost my immunity. Is there anything in my lifestyle that lowers my immunity?
Yes. So the question was, is there anything you can do to boost your immunity, and what in your lifestyle would reduce it? And there are things I have seen some on YouTube and the internet. Take this and your immune system is better. Nah, doesn't work. Doesn't work. They're just taking your money, and there's a special sin that occurs when someone tells you a lie, takes your money, and makes you think that they're making you better. I think. That's Ian Thompson talking. But in general, there are some behavioral things that we can do. It's not going to be so behavioral. Exercising. So the stronger your heart and your lungs are, the more likely, God forbid, if you had COVID, that you would do okay. Watching your weight. We know that the folks, if you went into an intensive care unit at any point in time, folks are overweight commonly with COVID. So if we can reduce our weight, that's good. Eating right, getting enough sleep. But then the other things are wearing the mask and getting vaccinated. So all those other ones have small benefits. The mask, bigger benefit. And the vaccine almost makes you completely immune. Almost. It's just that, okay, it's 96, 98%. But if you're driving, if you got in your car and you knew 98% chance, when I got in my car to come over here and get on 410, I knew there's a 99% chance I wasn't going to get in a fatal head-on collision. I put my seatbelt on. So 98% with COVID is not enough. But the vaccine is the most, mask is the second, and then the behavioral things will help you. All the other stuff, don't spend your money on. Yes, sir.
Are we going to treat COVID like we do with the flu, where every year we're going to take a vaccine?
You know, that's a really good question. Yes and no, my guess. COVID is a member of the coronavirus family of viruses. Coronavirus has been around forever. In fact, the vaccine that you've been getting with your annual flu vaccine has been for some of the COVID. It's just that this is a different, more aggressive one. So more than likely, yes. You may remember, for example, the Spanish flu, which for those of you who maybe your grandparents told you about it, 1917, 1918. You know where it came from? Fort Riley, Kansas was the first case in the world. And we sent the soldiers to Europe, and everybody got it. So it really wasn't Spanish flu. But the last case of Spanish flu, I think, was 1956. 1917, 1950. It'll probably be around, but it'll constantly be changing. So what I would anticipate is that those really smart folks will be making a vaccine. It'll be mixed into our flu vaccination. Great question. Yes, sir.
So I know that there are, well, we know that there are two variants that we've seen, the original and Delta, that there are probably more. Are there any that people are keeping an eye on that they think will come to rise?
So the question was, we had the first COVID, Then the Delta came. Are there others? And if so, are people watching for that? I remember watching Dr. Fauci October, November, as he was giving a presentation to a group of us physicians, and he mentioned a variant that he was concerned of. And I saw on his face the concern of that. And you know that he and his team, when I say his team, being the scientists at the NIH and at Pfizer and BioNTech and Moderna and J&J, they were working on it then. So yes, that surveillance is ongoing. But to really amplify your question, the way that we can prevent those variants from developing, if everyone were vaccinated, you wouldn't have enough virus out there to mutate. So the thing that is call it the dystopic future, the future that I don't want to see, is enough people who are unvaccinated that a variant that is unresponsive to the vaccine develops. That's the subject of a movie that we want it to be a movie rather than the real thing. Good question. Did you have a question in the back, sir?
You recommend one coronavirus over another, and why are there two shots and one shot?
Oh, so the question is one vaccine versus another, and why are there two shots with one with the other? Well, to be able to get, I want to say that there's other vaccinations that require several, there's a DTP you get several times when you were a kid, the same sort of thing, is to get your immunity up to a certain level. And it just turns out with the J&J one's enough, with the Moderna and the Pfizer too. Which one's better? The Moderna and the Pfizer may be a little bit better, but I always told folks that to me it was like going to HEB. Which line do you get in? I got on the line with the shortest number of people, right? So whatever was the easiest. From a practical standpoint, they're so close that it really doesn't matter. And so if you have only time to get one, get the J&J. But it's amazing right now that we had an employee in another organization that I worked for who hadn't been vaccinated, and I got online and I just made her an appointment. How dare me do that? I made her an appointment, but I didn't fill in her name, and I handed her my laptop, and I went to HEB, but there's many places you can do it. You can get an appointment this afternoon. You get an appointment tomorrow. You can pick your location. It's probably easier to get a vaccination than a McDonald's cheeseburger in San Antonio.
And P.S.I. pays you while you go get that.
Outstanding.
And if you get sick because of the vaccine, have a headache, or the flu, we will pay you if you are sick because of the vaccine.
Yes.
We're going to enter the safe zone after vaccine.
Oh, good question. So if you get your shot, are you immediately protected? No. And my recollection is that, for example, for the Pfizer and for the Moderna, first shot, second shot 3 weeks later, I think it's 5 to 7 days after the second shot, maybe 10 days after the second shot, that you're pretty much, but remember Thompson's rule 1, vaccine. Second rule is wear your mask. It doesn't matter. And part of it is, maybe I'll just stop with this because I know that you all have other things to do. We now know that if you are vaccinated, you can have coronavirus in your nose. That's where it tends to live. And you can have no symptoms whatsoever, and you can have coronavirus. And we know this because there have been several studies done in populations of people that got sick. And they found that the people who were vaccinated were just as likely to pass along coronavirus as people who were unvaccinated in one of the studies. But what happens is if you're vaccinated, the virus is in your nose, but it can't get into your system. So in the vast majority of cases, so you're protected, but you can still give it to somebody else. So once you get the vaccination, we still wear our mask so that we can protect the next person. And we can shut down this doggone thing. We can make it go away.
I have,
Yes, ma'am.
what about the children under 12? Where do you think we're at with that? Where is that going?
So the question is the youngsters, because I have two granddaughters, one who's 7, one who's 11, that, you know, we love them very much. And I know many of you have children in that age as well. Those studies are ongoing right now, and it's 5 to 12 is my understanding. Well, 5 to 11 in 12 months. It's the group that's being studied. And my guess is maybe October that we'll know, more or less. And you might ask the question, well, why isn't it faster than that? And it's because the Food and Drug Administration wants to be certain that it's safe. And people who say, oh, it's been happening so quickly, they've actually spent an enormous amount of time making sure that it's safe. So that's why it's taken so long. Do I wish I could get my grandchildren vaccinated? Absolutely. But we need to wait a little bit. So when they're going to school, they're wearing a mask and they're being told, cover your nose, cover your mouth, the whole thing. So, good question. We'll get there. We'll get there. Pues, muchísimas gracias para el placer que estaba aquí con ustedes. Thank you very much for letting me be here. These folks that lead you, or the reason why you're here is because they love you as much as all the rest of us love you and your family loves you. So please stay healthy. The work that you do, I know you save lives on the road every single day because of the work that you do. You make our country greener, right? Am I right? This is one of the greenest companies in San Antonio. So we're honored that you are here in San Antonio, and we're very thankful for the work that you do. Stay healthy. You are in our prayers all the time. God bless you.
There is nothing to follow up with that. That's the truth. That's the way it is. A man that I've watched, I won't start myself, but I watched him cry when he loses a patient. And I can tell you what he told us the other day, which was someone our age, dying at 80, and they tried to save him. They can accept that. They did their best. Youngsters, 30 and 20, under 50, that have not lived their lives fully, they can't stand it. And all he cares about is your health and my health and our family's health. Listen to what he said. Think. Look in the mirror. Think about what he said, and then make your own decisions. There is no wrong decision for you personally. But think about us as a family. Are you safer if you're vaccinated? Is he told you, and you had an opportunity, and I'll give you one more. If there's anybody that has a question of why you don't want to be vaccinated that he hasn't answered, ask him, because he'll give you the answer. But I didn't hear anything today that said, don't take the vaccine because it's dangerous. What I heard was, you can die from the new variant. And this man, you can tell, he has no time. He took his time today, which very emotional for me to come down here and talk to you, because he cares about Kathy and me and my family, and he cares about you all. He's been here. This is the third time he's been here to see this plant, and he loves you. When he operated on me 6 years ago, I'll never forget. I was scared. I remember laying there. He came in. He grabbed my hand. He grabbed the other surgeon's hand, and he prayed to God before he operated. He's a very religious man. He's not Texas's greatest. He's not the United States greatest. He's in the worldwide greatest. Take a chance and Google Ian Thompson Jr. and see what he does, not here in Texas, not in the United States, but around the world, and then question his honesty with you today, and I think you'll find out that we're very lucky to have had him. So Ian, I love you, you know that. And thank you so much for being here. Does anyone have a question? Because there are no wrong questions. We talk about this all the time. There's no dumb question. There is not a dumb question. So if you have something that he hadn't answered,
What's up? About the nose and the nose in Spanish, please. Oh, I'm gonna ask. Yeah.
Pues la cosa es que es importante es para usar la máscara, la cobraboca, manera correcta, es que tiene que cubrir nariz y la boca los dos. Tiene que, ¿cómo se dice? Tener un fit que no sale aire de aquí ni ahí y con eso se proteja el nivel maximal. So you need to make sure you're covering your nose and your mouth. And it's not unusual that we'll see patients who will come to my clinic that it's down around their. So at a distance, when I'm speaking to you, the risk is relatively low because the virus particles beyond this. But all of our meetings, we're all wearing masks. And all of us are vaccinated where I work. We're all wearing masks all the time. So I don't like it. And sometimes I wake up and I think that it's all kind of like a bad dream or it's all over with. It will be over with. Our parents went through this with, or our grandparents went through it with polio and so forth, and we'll get through it. We're amazingly resilient, but the fewer of us that have to pass away, the better. Basta, suficiente. God bless you all.